Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to On Cash Flow, where I help you become a master of your own cash flow. Now let's get started. Maybe you're making a high amount of household income, or maybe you're striving to make a high amount of household income, but you can still be making plenty of mistakes even when you're making plenty of money. But before we get into those mistakes, let's first define what exactly is high income. So right here you have a percentage of distribution of household income in the United States within 2023. And I think it's probably easy to say if you're in the top percentile, which is listed here as 200,000 and over, the data suggests here that 14.4% of households make over $200,000. Now, of course, this is households and it includes anyone earning income within the same household. This doesn't necessarily mean it's like a 2% family, but I think that's a pretty good number for us to go over. If you're making over $200,000 in your household, then you're probably considered high income. Now let's get into the mistakes here. Mistake number one, and this is in no particular order of importance. Number one is you're not saving enough of that income because it's generally not enough to just make a high amount of income. You have to use that high amount of income for the greater good, which is saving for retirement, saving for financial independence in this case. So you can see here, this is a screenshot from Net Worth F.I.R.E, and the data that they have says that the average U.S. savings rate is less than 8%. And if you're only saving 8%, then it's going to take you about 41.3 years in order to reach financial independence. And that is with an annual income of $250,000 and you're saving $20,000. So that would be 8%. And technically, with the same assumptions, the percentage-wise of your income, it works the same. If you're saving 8%, then and you're starting from zero, it's going to take you about 41 years. So if you are making a high household income, I really hope that you are putting it to good use and saving a good percentage of it for your financial independence. Mistake number two, when you're making a high amount of income, is not focusing on smart tax avoidance. Because with a high amount of income comes a high amount of taxation. Because we have a progressive tax system in the United States when it comes to income. So looking at this chart, this is the 2024 federal income tax brackets. If we have a couple that's married filing jointly and they have, let's say, $250,000 of household income, we can go on this chart and see, okay, here's married filing jointly, and scroll down to where they would be at, and they would fall into the 24% tax bracket. So that means that some of their income is getting taxed federally at 24%. And then if they live in a state that taxes income as well, you can add that on top of that. So they could easily be paying 30% of some of their money into taxes. Almost every 1/3 of what they earn on a certain point is getting taxed. And that means that a good return for someone that is earning a high amount of income is focusing on how to avoid taxes. If they can avoid a 30% tax on their income, then that's almost like a 30% return on your investment that year, because you're getting more of that money that you made to keep for yourself and to invest and grow. So definitely don't forget about tax avoidance if you're making a high amount of income. Mistake number three, making a high amount of income. A lot of people think that they have to live in a high income neighborhood, right? So they have to fit in with their peers that are making a similar amount of income as them. What comes with this though is usually a lot higher expenses, right? Just because you're making a high amount of income doesn't mean you have to have that giant house in that fancy neighborhood. As you can see by my cool little illustration here. You can live in the normal, regular middle class home. If it's only 2 people and 2 kids, you only really need a 3-bedroom house. What happens when you live in a high income neighborhood, it usually comes with these right here. It comes with HOAs usually. Yeah, you have a lot more expenses with landscaping, to keep it up to look like the neighborhood. You have higher utilities if you have a larger house usually. You have higher property taxes if you live in a more expensive house, and it's usually how property taxes are based on. And then, of course, just general expectations. It's expected that if you live in a neighborhood like that you're going to conform to the norms of that neighborhood. And with that comes a high amount of spending usually. And similar to that, at number 4 is just because you're making a high amount of income, it doesn't mean that you need to be driving a high value vehicle. A vehicle that costs $30,000 is going to do the same thing that a vehicle that costs $60,000 is going to do. It's going to get you from point A to B. It's going to get you from your job and home so that you can make that high amount of income. And while it's often true, a lot of professions that earn a high amount of income, it's expected that you have a nice vehicle. I don't think it's necessarily expected that you drive, the most high class vehicle. It's usually just expected that you drive a nice vehicle, right? Like maybe a newer vehicle, a clean vehicle, not necessarily driving the most expensive vehicle out there. And a reason why having a high amount of income and having a high income vehicle is probably not a good idea is that it comes with a lot of higher costs overall with everything, not just the purchase price, but also higher costs when it comes to insurance. It costs more to insure the vehicle. Sometimes it might be a vehicle that doesn't get a good gas mileage versus, a regular sedan vehicle. So gas could be more expensive. And then of course the depreciation on the vehicle is a lot more because it has a higher cost initially. That means it's going to have a higher amount of depreciation. Next up at number 5, if you're making a high amount of income, I hope you're not making this mistake, and that is paying for expensive financial advice. Now, don't get me wrong here. There is definitely financial advice out there that is worth paying for, especially if you need a guide and you need something to set you on the right track. What I mean by this is normally people with high amounts of income seek to have financial advisors that manage their assets for them. So that's why I have right here assets under management versus fee only. I would suggest in the vast majority of cases that people pay for fee-only advice when it comes to financial advice rather than having their assets managed for them. And I'm not going to get into too many reasons why in this video, but for the most part, having your assets under management is extremely expensive. That 1% fee to manage your investments adds up to a devastatingly large amount of cost over time. And there's plenty of videos like this out there. There's plenty of articles out there. You can see how just a 1% fee assets under management can pretty much reduce your retirement savings in half over a very long period of time. It can reduce it by a significant amount. And not only that, having your assets under management, having your investments managed for you, in most cases, if they are investing in like actively managed mutual funds, it comes with a lot more fees because those actively managed funds have much higher fees themselves. And not only that, the vast majority of them tend to not outperform their benchmark over time, like 90% of them. For the most part, managing your own investments and investing in simple index funds is probably going to be the best for the vast majority of us, even if you're making a high amount of income. And that leads me to mistake number 6, and that is thinking that you need to invest differently than everyone else. Just because you are making a good amount of household income, it doesn't necessarily mean that your investment strategy should change than what someone making half of your income is making. Low fee index funds just work. They provide a good amount of healthy return over the long run, and they keep your costs extremely low, which tends to be how a lot of ordinary people can grow a substantial amount of wealth over time with patient, consistent investing. There's this stigma out there that people earning higher incomes should take higher risks with the amount of money that they invest. And I don't think that is necessarily true. I think that risk and how you invest should be very similar from person to person, depending on what your overall goals are. And if your overall goals are to grow wealth over time and be able to retire, be able to become financially independent, then I think that the vast majority of us should probably stick to investing in low fee index funds over the long run. Next up, mistake number 7 has to do with insurance. This is because when you have a higher amount of income, you might not have adequate insurance that really is going to meet your needs in your individual situation. And this is why. Someone who's earning a high amount of income, especially if it's like one earner in the household that's earning the vast majority of the income, if they become disabled, they are going to lose a lot of income. Disability insurance, like federal disability insurance, isn't really that much compared to how much income they're making. And so that is one situation where it might actually be better to purchase your own policy when it comes to disability insurance. If you are dependent on a high amount of income, and if you lose that high amount of income, then you might be in a very tough spot. Another similar one is with unemployment. The same thing with unemployment insurance. If someone is earning a high amount of income and they have a high amount of spending, even if they are saving a good amount, but they're still spending a lot, then a period of unemployment can be very devastating for that lifestyle. And so it might actually be worth it in some circumstances to purchase additional unemployment insurance as well to basically protect that high amount of income. Not only that, with a high amount of income, especially with a lot of different careers that command a higher amount of income, they're exposed to a lot of liability. And so it might be best for high income households to have more liability insurance than someone earning, like, let's say, a middle class income. And to go along with that liability, I like the idea of umbrella insurance because it kind of helps cover in those gaps, and it helps kind of boost your liability insurance as well. One thing that is very important for most people to have is health insurance, because a health catastrophe can be quite devastating to even a very healthy amount of savings can be wiped away with the health emergency. So catastrophic health insurance is definitely something I think that everyone should have. Now, those are the mistakes that I see a lot of high income earners making, but I know there's more that we can add to this list. So I'm calling on you. Please let me know in the comments below, what else can we add to this list here? What are some other mistakes that high income earners are making? And if you enjoyed watching this video, please make sure you hit the like button on this video because it really does help me out and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I'll see you next time.